The stars were dying and everyone knew it. Admiral Kyle Henderson stood on the bridge of the Zephyrian command ship, watching another solar system vanish from the galaxy map. The red dot that marked the Kelton system simply disappeared as if it had never existed. 3 billion Kalari lives gone in an instant. The crystalline being next to him made a sound like breaking glass. That was how Zephyrians cried. "How many does that make this month?" Kyle asked without turning around. 47 systems, came the reply from behind him. The voice belonged to Council Member Zareth, one of the few Zephyrians who could speak human languages without a translator. "The Devourers are moving faster now." Kyle nodded and tried not to think about the numbers. 47 systems meant somewhere between 50 and 200 billion lives, depending on how populated each world had been. The Devourers did not care about population counts. They consumed everything that had dimensional energy: planets, stars, space stations, ships, people. Everything that existed in normal space was food to them. The war had been going on for 11 years now. It started when the first Devourer entities appeared at the edge of the Andromeda spiral arm. They looked like massive jellyfish made of dark energy, each one the size of a small moon. They moved through space without ships or technology that anyone could understand. They simply appeared near a star system and began to feed. The feeding process was horrible to watch. The Devourers would extend tendrils of pure darkness toward planets and stars. Anything the tendrils touched would begin to fade away like it was being erased from reality itself. The energy from destroyed matter would flow back to the creatures, making them grow larger and spawn more of their kind. At first, each species tried to fight alone. The proud Vorthan Empire sent their ancient dreadnought fleets to stop the invasion. The crystalline Zephyrians used their mastery of energy weapons to try burning the creatures out of space. The hive-minded Kalari threw millions of bioships at the entities in coordinated swarm attacks. Nothing worked. The Devourers seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Energy weapons passed through them without effect. Physical projectiles struck something that was not quite solid. Even nuclear weapons only seemed to feed them more energy. After losing hundreds of fleets, the three major galactic powers did something that had never happened before in recorded history. They formed an alliance. Kyle was one of the few humans to witness the signing of the Galactic Defense Pact. He had been serving as a military observer for Earth when the ceremony took place on Nexus Station. The sight of ancient enemies working together should have been inspiring. Instead, it felt like watching survivors huddle together while a storm destroyed everything around them. Earth had not been invited to join the alliance at first. Humans were too new to space travel, and their technology was considered primitive by galactic standards. That changed when human ships started showing unexpected effectiveness against Devourer scouts. Human weapons were built differently than alien technology. They used simple kinetic force and chemical explosives instead of exotic energy fields. For reasons no one understood, this made them slightly more effective against the entities. Kyle had earned his current position by being the first human to successfully coordinate a mixed-species fleet action. His tactics during the Battle of Rigel Prime had saved 12 billion Vorthan civilians and earned him respect among alien commanders. Now he wore the uniform of the Galactic Defense Fleet and commanded ships from all three Alliance species. The respect came with a terrible price. Kyle had watched more civilizations die in the past 11 years than most people could count. He had seen the Devourers consume entire sectors, while Alliance fleets could only retreat and try to evacuate whoever they could save. The entities were not just winning the war. They were ending it by erasing one side completely. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Danny Wright from the communication station, "we are getting reports from the Outer Rim colonies. Another wave of Devourers has appeared near the Centauri cluster." Kyle closed his eyes for a moment. The Centauri cluster held over 50 star systems with a total population in the hundreds of billions. If the Devourers had reached it in force, there would be no stopping them from pushing into the galactic core where the most populated worlds were located. "How many entities?" he asked. "Scout reports say at least 300 confirmed. Possibly more." The bridge fell silent. 300 Devourers working together could consume the entire cluster in a matter of weeks. The Alliance had perhaps 50 ships in that sector, and most of those were evacuation transports rather than combat vessels. "Send word to all fleet commanders," Kyle said finally. "Full retreat from the Outer Rim. We pull back to the secondary defensive line and try to hold there." Council Member Zareth made another glass-breaking sound. "We are running out of places to retreat to, Admiral Henderson." Kyle knew the crystalline being was right. The Alliance had been falling back for years now, trading space for time while they searched for some kind of weapon or strategy that could actually hurt the Devourers. So far, they had found nothing. Every scientific breakthrough led to dead ends. Every new weapon proved useless. Every tactical innovation only delayed the inevitable for a few more months. The worst part was not knowing where the Devourers came from or what they wanted. They appeared without warning, consumed everything in their path, and then moved on to the next target. There was no communication, no negotiation, no pause in their advance. They were like a force of nature that happened to be intelligent and hungry. "Admiral," Wright called out again. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." Kyle turned toward the young human officer. Wright had served under him for 3 years and was not given to false alarms. "What kind of strange?" "Energy signatures that match human technology, but the power levels are off the scale. Whatever is generating them is about 6 light-years outside our current position." "Human technology," Kyle repeated slowly. "Are you certain?" "The quantum resonance patterns are definitely human in origin, but they are amplified beyond anything in our current database. It is like someone took one of our fusion reactors and made it 1,000 times more powerful." Kyle felt something he had not experienced in years. Hope. It was a dangerous feeling in the middle of a losing war, but he could not help himself. There was only one human ship that had been missing long enough to potentially develop such advanced technology. "Right. Send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we may have found the Endeavor." The UES Endeavor had been Earth's most advanced exploration vessel when it launched 11 years ago. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew of over 800 humans had been sent to investigate strange energy readings in the space between galaxies. They had been expected to return within 2 years. When communication was lost after 6 months, most people assumed the ship had been destroyed by the Devourers like so many others. But Kyle had always wondered. The Endeavor had been equipped with experimental technology and crewed by some of humanity's best scientists and engineers. If any ship could survive in the void between galaxies, it would be that one. Now something with human energy signatures was approaching Alliance space with power readings that defied explanation. Kyle tried not to let himself believe it was really them. After 11 years of loss and retreat, good news felt too dangerous to trust. But deep in his heart, he hoped the humans were coming home. Captain Jake Morrison remembered the exact moment everything changed. He had been standing on the bridge of the UES Endeavor watching the stars thin out as they approached the edge of known space. The mission was simple enough. Earth had detected strange energy readings coming from the void between galaxies and wanted them investigated. The Endeavor was the most advanced ship humanity had ever built, and Jake's crew was the best they could. Assemble. Dr. Lisa Hamilton had been excited about the readings from the moment they left Earth. The chief science officer spent most of her time in the forward labs running calculations and theories about what they might find. Her team included some of the smartest people Jake had ever met. Dr. Ryan Clark was a theoretical physicist who could explain quantum mechanics, like he was talking about the weather. Dr. Kate Morgan studied alien life forms and had theories about how consciousness might evolve in different environments. Engineering Commander Ben Torres kept the ship running perfectly during the long journey to the galactic rim. His modifications to the fusion reactors had given them 30% more power than the original designs called for. Tactical Officer Amy Rodriguez drilled the security teams daily and made sure all weapon systems stayed ready for anything they might encounter. The crew was confident and well prepared. They had no idea they were flying straight into something that would change them forever. The energy readings led them to what looked like empty space at first. Long-range sensors showed nothing but cosmic background radiation and the faint light of distant galaxies. Then the Endeavor crossed an invisible line and everything went wrong at once. Space itself seemed to twist around them. The stars outside the viewport stretched into long streaks of light before vanishing completely. Every instrument on the ship started giving impossible readings. The gravity generators fluctuated wildly, sending crew members floating through corridors one moment and pressed against bulkheads the next. "Full stop," Jake had ordered, but Torres reported that the engines were not responding to commands. The ship was being pulled forward by something that the sensors could not detect or measure. Then they saw it. The Devourer entity was massive beyond anything Jake could have imagined. It looked like a jellyfish made of pure darkness floating in space. Tendrils of shadow stretched out from its body for thousands of kilometers in every direction. The thing was easily the size of Earth's moon and radiated a cold that seemed to go deeper than temperature. All weapons. Fire at will, Amy had ordered, but the energy beams and missiles passed through the creature without any effect. The Devourer did not even seem to notice their attacks. It simply continued pulling them closer with invisible forces. Jake expected to die. Everyone on the bridge was thinking the same thing. They had found one of the entities that was destroying civilizations across the galaxy, and their weapons were useless against it. The creature would consume their ship and crew just like it had consumed countless others. Instead, something different happened. The Devourer's tendrils wrapped around the Endeavor but did not destroy it. The ship was pulled inside the creature's body, and Jake felt reality itself shift around them. The stars disappeared completely and were replaced by something that hurt to look at directly. They had been dragged into a pocket dimension. The space inside was larger than the creature's external size should have allowed. Broken ships from dozens of different civilizations floated in the strange environment, like a graveyard of lost explorers. Some of the vessels were so old that their hulls had crystallized into formations that barely looked artificial anymore. Others were recent enough that their emergency lights still blinked weakly in the darkness. "Captain?" Dr. Hamilton had said in a voice full of wonder and terror. "I think we just found where all the missing ships have been going." The pocket dimension operated under different physical laws than normal space. Time moved strangely. What felt like days to the crew turned out to be hours according to their instruments. Energy behaved in ways that made their fusion reactors more efficient instead of less. Most importantly, they were not being consumed like the Devourer's usual prey. Dr. Clark was the first to understand why. The creatures fed on dimensional energy, the force that held normal spacetime together. Inside the pocket dimension, that energy was already separated from reality. They were like food that had already been digested and stored for later use. The discovery gave them hope, but also presented a terrible problem. They were trapped inside a cosmic predator with no way to escape and no idea how long their supplies would last. Jake made the decision that would define everything that came after. Instead of trying to find a way out immediately, they would study their prison and learn everything they could about their captor. The investigation teams that Amy organized found incredible things in the wreckage around them. Ships from the ancient Vorthon Empire that had been missing for millions of years. Crystalline vessels that belonged to species that had evolved and gone extinct before the current galactic civilizations even existed. Technology that was so advanced it seemed like magic to human scientists. Dr. Morgan made the most important discovery when she examined some of the oldest wrecks. The crews had not died when their ships were captured. They had adapted to life inside the pocket dimension and evolved into something new. Her scans found traces of biological material that had been enhanced and modified by exposure to dimensional energy over vast periods of time. "Captain," she had reported to Jake during one of their daily briefings, "the evidence suggests that prolonged exposure to this environment causes controlled evolutionary changes. The crews that survived the longest showed signs of enhanced cognitive function, improved physical capabilities, and extended lifespans." Jake understood the implications immediately. If they were going to be trapped in the pocket dimension for years or decades, they could either waste away fighting against their situation, or they could adapt and grow stronger. The choice was obvious to him. Dr. Hamilton led the effort to understand and harness the abandoned technologies. Her teams worked around the clock to reverse engineer systems that were millions of years more advanced than anything Earth had produced. The process was slow and dangerous. Several experiments overloaded and nearly destroyed sections of the ship. But gradually they began to make progress. Torres figured out how to integrate alien power systems with human engineering principles. The ship's energy output increased by factors that should have been impossible. Amy adapted weapons technology that could strike targets across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. The crew itself began to change as well. The dimensional energy exposure that Dr. Morgan had detected in the ancient wrecks started affecting them too. Their reaction times improved. Their ability to process complex information increased. Most importantly, They began to think in ways that transcended the limitations of normal three-dimensional space. Jake found that he could perceive patterns and connections that had been invisible before. Strategic planning became easier when he could visualize multiple possible futures at once. The enhanced perspective allowed him to coordinate his crew's efforts with unprecedented efficiency. Years passed inside the pocket dimension, while only months went by in normal space. The Endeavor was completely rebuilt using hybrid technologies from dozens of dead civilizations. The crew evolved into something that was still recognizably human, but enhanced in ways that prepared them for challenges they could not yet imagine. They were becoming something new, something that could fight back against the Devourers and win. When they finally found a way to escape their prison, they would return to a galaxy that desperately needed exactly what they had become. The UES Endeavor materialized near Nexus Station like a ghost returning from the dead. Admiral Kyle Henderson watched from the command deck as sensors struggled to process what they were seeing. The ship that appeared on their screens bore only a passing resemblance to the vessel that had disappeared 11 years ago. The Endeavor's hull gleamed, with patterns that seemed to shift and flow even when the ship was perfectly still. Energy readings spiked beyond anything in the Alliance database. The vessel radiated power signatures that made veteran engineers shake their heads in disbelief. Whatever the humans had encountered in the void between galaxies had changed them in ways that defied understanding. "Sir," Lieutenant Wright called out from his station, "the ship is broadcasting standard human identification codes, but the energy output is reading at over 10,000 times normal levels." Kyle felt his heart racing as he processed the implications. 10,000 times normal output meant the Endeavor was generating more power than some small stars. The technology required to contain and control such forces should have been impossible for any known civilization. "Open a channel," Kyle ordered. "This is Admiral Henderson of the Galactic Defense Fleet. UES Endeavor, please respond." The reply came immediately, and Kyle recognized the voice despite 11 years of separation. "Admiral Henderson, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Endeavor requesting permission to dock. We have information that the Alliance needs to hear." Kyle authorized the docking but insisted on full security protocols. Whatever the Endeavor had become during its long absence, it represented technology that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. 3 species sent representatives to the meeting. Kyle would speak for the humans. Council member Zareth represented the Zephyrians, with her crystalline form towering over the others. Designation: 97 Alpha came as the voice of the Kalari collective mind. The docking bay filled with an energy field that made everyone's instruments flicker as the Endeavor settled into position. When the airlock opened, Kyle got his first look at Captain Morrison after 11 years of separation. The man looked exactly as Kyle remembered him, but something fundamental had changed. Morrison moved with a fluid precision that suggested enhanced reflexes. His eyes held a depth of understanding that seemed to perceive more than normal human vision should allow. "Admiral," Morrison said with a smile that was both familiar and somehow different, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I know our appearance must be raising questions." Kyle studied his old friend carefully. Morrison appeared to be the same age as when he had left Earth 11 years ago. Either the man had been in some form of stasis, or the changes went deeper than physical appearance suggested. "Jake, where have you been? What happened to your ship and crew?" Morrison gestured for them to follow him aboard the Endeavor. "That's a long story, and one that's better shown than told. Dr. Hamilton is prepared to brief you on what we discovered." The interior of the ship was as transformed as the exterior. Corridors that Kyle remembered as standard human military design now flowed with organic curves and surfaces that seemed to respond to the presence of people walking through them. Lighting adapted automatically to provide perfect visibility without glare or shadows. The air itself felt different, charged with energy that made everyone more alert and focused. Dr. Lisa Hamilton met them in what had once been the ship's main briefing room. Like Morrison, she appeared unchanged by 11 years, but possessed the same enhanced presence that suggested capabilities beyond normal human limits. Behind her, holographic displays showed star charts and dimensional readings that hurt to look at directly. "Gentlemen and lady," Dr. Hamilton began, addressing the mixed group of Alliance representatives, "what I'm about to show you will fundamentally change your understanding of the Devourer entities and what it will take to defeat them." The display shifted to show a massive creature floating in space between galaxies. Kyle recognized it as a Devourer, but this one was larger than any they had encountered before. The entity seemed to be made of crystallized darkness with tendrils that stretched across light years. This is the primary consciousness that controls all devourer entities in our region of space, Dr. Hamilton continued. We spent 11 years trapped inside a pocket dimension created by this being. During that time, we learned that the devourers are not simple predators. They are fragments of a consciousness from a universe that died billions of years ago. 9-7 Alpha spoke with the collective voice of a billion Kalari minds. Impossible. No consciousness could survive the death of an entire universe. Dr. Hamilton smiled patiently. That's what we thought too until we saw the evidence. The devourers consume dimensional energy because they are trying to rebuild their lost reality. Every star system they destroy provides raw material for their reconstruction project. They are not evil in any way, we understand the concept. They are simply trying to resurrect something that can never truly be brought back. Zareth made a sound like crystal chimes in a strong wind. If this is true, then conventional warfare will never stop them. They have motivation beyond simple survival. Exactly, Morrison said, stepping forward. Which is why we had to evolve beyond conventional capabilities. The pocket dimension exposure changed us in controlled ways, enhanced cognitive function, improved physical capabilities, extended lifespans, and most importantly, the ability to perceive and manipulate dimensional energy directly. Kyle felt a chill as he realized the implications. You're saying your entire crew has been enhanced. 847 people, including children who have grown up with these capabilities, Dr. Hamilton confirmed. We are still human in every way that matters, but we have become something more. Something capable of fighting the devourers on their own terms. To demonstrate, Morrison gestured toward one of the wall displays. Without touching any controls, the screen responded to his thoughts and showed detailed tactical readouts of the station's defenses. We can interface directly with most computer systems. Our enhanced perception allows us to track objects moving through multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. Our weapons can strike targets that exist partially outside normal space. The Alliance representatives exchanged glances that ranged from amazed to terrified. The humans had returned with capabilities that made them potentially more powerful than any known civilization. In the wrong hands, such technology could be used for conquest rather than defense. Morrison seemed to read their thoughts. I know what you're thinking, and I understand your concerns. We didn't ask for these changes, and we certainly didn't plan to become something beyond baseline humanity. But we are still the same people who left Earth 11 years ago to explore the unknown. We came back because our galaxy needs help, and we finally have the tools to provide it. An alarm sounded throughout the station as sensors detected incoming devourer entities. Kyle checked the readings and felt his blood turn cold. 15 creatures were approaching Nexus Station in perfect formation. Previous attacks had involved single entities or small groups. 15 working together could consume the entire station and everyone on it within hours. Permission to engage the hostiles, Admiral, Morrison requested formally. Kyle looked at his transformed friend and made a decision that would change the course of the war. Permission granted, Captain. Show us what you learned out there. Morrison nodded and spoke into his communicator. All stations, this is the captain. We have hostiles incoming and Alliance observers aboard. Let's show them how we fight now. The Endeavor undocked from the station with impossible grace and moved toward the approaching devourers like a predator that had finally found worthy prey. The battle against the 15 devourer entities lasted exactly 17 minutes. Admiral Kyle Henderson watched from Nexus Station as the Endeavor moved through space with a grace that defied everything he knew about ship design and physics. The vessel flowed between the massive creatures like water, finding its way around stones in a stream. Commander Amy Rodriguez coordinated the attack from the Endeavor's tactical station. Her enhanced perception allowed her to track each devourer entity across multiple dimensional phases at once. The creatures tried to phase shift away from incoming fire, but Rodriguez predicted their movements before they made them. Weapons Officer Sophie Carter fired dimensional disruption beams that struck the entities in spaces they had not yet moved to. The devourers had never encountered weapons that could hit them while they existed, partially outside normal reality. Their confusion was obvious even to observers watching from the station. The creatures flailed their massive tendrils and tried to coordinate counterattacks, but the Endeavor stayed ahead of every move they made. When the last devourer entity dissolved into harmless energy particles, Kyle found himself staring at tactical displays that made no sense according to conventional warfare doctrine. The humans had not just won an impossible battle, they had made it look easy. Captain Morrison returned to the station with his senior staff to begin the process that would change how the galaxy fought back against the invasion. Dr. Ryan Clark worked with Vorthon engineers to explain dimensional manipulation theory in terms their ancient minds could understand. The Vorthons had been masters of energy technology for millions of years, but their thinking was locked into patterns that could not adapt to multidimensional combat. Your dreadnoughts are powerful, but they only exist in one-dimensional phase at a time, Dr. Clark explained to Chief Engineer Voxtar during a design session. The Devourers can step sideways into parallel dimensions and avoid your weapons completely. We need to modify your ships so they can fire across dimensional boundaries. Voxtar studied the holographic displays with growing excitement. The ancient being had been building starships since before humans evolved on Earth, but the concepts Dr. Clark was sharing opened up possibilities that had never occurred to him. This dimensional stabilizer array you describe would require complete reconstruction of our power distribution systems. Not complete reconstruction, Dr. Clark said patiently. Enhancement and adaptation. Your existing technology is actually well suited for the modifications. Fourth-hand energy crystals can store and channel dimensional forces much better than our human fusion systems. You just need to think about power flow in more than 3 dimensions. Similar conversations were happening throughout the Alliance fleet as Dr. Kate Morgan worked with Kalari bioengineers to develop organic computers capable of processing quantum battlefield data. The Kalari collective mind was naturally suited for multidimensional thinking, but their biological technology needed upgrades to handle the processing speeds required for dimensional combat. Your bioships already grow and adapt during battle, Dr. Morgan explained to Swarm Speaker Beta 59 during a biolab session. We just need to teach them to grow in directions that normal biology cannot access. Dimensional energy exposure will cause controlled mutations that enhance cognitive processing by factors of 10 or more. The Kalari found the process easier to understand than the other Alliance species because their hive mind already operated on principles that transcended individual consciousness. Beta 59 coordinated with thousands of other Kalari simultaneously while discussing the modifications with Dr. Morgan. Within hours, the collective mind had designed biocomputer systems that could interface with dimensional manipulation technology. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Nathan Pierce shared the controlled evolution techniques with Alliance scientists but insisted on strict safety protocols. The enhancement process that had transformed the Endeavour crew took years to complete safely. Rushing the changes could result in death or worse fates that Pierce had observed in some of the ancient wrecks they had studied in the pocket dimension. The human crew volunteered for these modifications because we had no other choice, Dr. Pierce explained to a mixed group of Alliance medical officers. We were trapped in an environment that demanded adaptation or death. Your people have the luxury of choosing whether to undergo enhancement and controlling the pace of change. Some individuals from each species volunteered for the enhancement process despite the risks. The first volunteers were military personnel who understood that the war effort needed every advantage available. The modifications were performed slowly and carefully, with constant monitoring to ensure that subjects retained their original personalities and loyalties. Communications Officer Laura Thompson established a new fleet-wide command network that allowed real-time coordination across multiple dimensions. The system connected enhanced individuals from all Alliance species into a loose collective that could share tactical information instantly. Unlike the Kalari hive mind, each person retained individual consciousness while gaining access to shared battle awareness. Think of it as a conversation that happens faster than normal speech, Thompson explained to nervous Alliance commanders during training sessions. You can participate as much or as little as you choose, but the shared information will help you coordinate with other ships in ways that were never possible before. The training process revealed fundamental differences in how each species approached multidimensional thinking. Humans adapted quickly because they were used to changing their perspectives and trying new approaches. Zephyrians struggled initially because their crystalline thought patterns were precise but inflexible. Fortowns found the concepts fascinating, but needed time to overcome millions of years of traditional thinking. Kalari adapted fastest because their collective consciousness already operated beyond individual limitations. Commander Ben Torres led teams of engineers from all 4 species in retrofitting Alliance ships with dimensional warfare capabilities. The process was complex because each species had developed technology based on different scientific principles. Human ships used brute force engineering. Zephyrian vessels relied on elegant energy manipulation. Vorthan dreadnoughts employed ancient knowledge refined over eons. Kalari bioships grew and adapted using living technology. "We are not trying to make every ship identical," Torres explained during a joint engineering conference. "We are creating a fleet where different approaches work together to cover each other's weaknesses." Human ships provide dimensional anchoring points. Zephyrian vessels handle energy projection across dimensional barriers. Vorthan dreadnoughts deliver massive firepower through dimensional channels. Kalari bioships adapt and coordinate the fleet response in real time. The Alliance fleet grew, stronger with each passing month as more ships received dimensional warfare upgrades and more crew. Members underwent enhancement procedures. Battle effectiveness improved dramatically as enhanced individuals learned to coordinate their efforts across species barriers. Devourer attacks that would have destroyed entire sectors now resulted in Alliance victories with minimal losses. But the improved capabilities came with sobering intelligence about the true scope of the threat they faced. Enhanced sensors revealed that the local Devourer swarm was only a small part of a much larger entity. The primary consciousness that Dr. Hamilton had detected was moving toward the galactic core with millions of Devourer entities under its direct control. Captain Morrison called a meeting of all Alliance leaders to share the discovery that would define their final strategy. "We have perhaps 6 months before the main swarm reaches the most populated systems in the galaxy. Our enhanced fleet can handle the advanced scouts, but we cannot stop millions of entities using conventional tactics. We need to strike at the source." Navigator Chief Alex Parker and Sensor Specialist Maria Santos had spent weeks mapping the route to the primary consciousness using dimensional tracking techniques they had learned in the pocket dimension. The journey would take the Alliance fleet into the spaces between galaxies where reality itself became unstable, and time flowed in unpredictable patterns. "This will not be a battle. We can win through superior firepower," Morrison continued. "We are going to attempt something that has never been tried before. We are going to communicate with the entity that controls the Devourers, and find a solution that does not require the destruction of either our galaxy or their consciousness." The Alliance leaders understood that they were committing to a mission that could end in the total annihilation of their combined fleets. But the alternative was watching helplessly as the Devourers consumed every inhabited world in the galaxy. The choice between certain death and possible victory was no choice at all. The journey into the void between galaxies tested every ship and crew member in ways that no amount of training could have prepared them for. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Endeavor as reality twisted around the Alliance fleet, like something from a fever dream. Stars disappeared and reappeared in different locations. Time moved backward for minutes at a time before snapping forward again. Space itself seemed to breathe with a rhythm that made experienced navigators dizzy and confused. Navigator Chief Alex Parker used techniques learned during their 11 years in the pocket dimension to guide the fleet through regions where normal physics became suggestions rather than laws. His enhanced perception allowed him to see pathways through the chaos that would have been invisible to baseline human senses. Sensor Specialist Maria Santos coordinated with enhanced crew members from other ships to create a navigation network that shared real-time updates about safe routes through the dimensional storms. "Captain," Santos reported during one particularly difficult passage, "the Vorthan dreadnought Eternal Wisdom is reporting structural stress fractures. The dimensional fluctuations are affecting their ancient hull materials differently than our enhanced armor." Morrison nodded and opened a channel to the struggling vessel. "Eternal Wisdom, this is Captain Morrison. Reduce speed and move into our dimensional wake. The Endeavor can shield you from the worst fluctuations until we reach more stable space." The Alliance fleet had grown to include over 200,000 ships from all 4 species, but the journey was taking a severe toll on vessels that had not been fully upgraded with dimensional warfare technology. Ships designed for normal space travel struggled to maintain structural integrity when reality itself became fluid around them. Dr. Lisa Hamilton coordinated with scientists from all Alliance species to study the approaching destination. that their enhanced sensors were beginning to detect. The primary devourer consciousness existed in a region of space where multiple universes had collapsed into each other over billions of years. The resulting dimensional tangle created a maze of overlapping realities that defied understanding. What we are approaching is not just a creature, Dr. Hamilton explained during a fleet-wide briefing. It is a construct built from the crystallized remains of an entire universe. Every devourer entity we have fought was born from this central consciousness as it attempts to rebuild something that can never truly be restored. The heart of the devourer consciousness finally became visible when the fleet reached the edge of the dimensional storm region. The sight was beyond anything that any crew member had imagined possible. A structure the size of a star system floated in the void, built from materials that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Crystallized space-time formed spiraling towers that stretched across light years. Rivers of pure dimensional energy flowed between massive structures that defied geometric logic. Admiral Kyle Henderson watched from his command ship as millions of devourer entities swarmed around the construct like antibodies protecting a living organism. The creatures ranged in size from the moon-sized entities they had fought before to massive beings that dwarfed entire planets. All of them moved with perfect coordination as they detected the approaching Alliance fleet. All ships prepare for dimensional combat, Morrison broadcast to the fleet. Remember your training and trust your enhanced crew members. We are not here to destroy this consciousness. We are here to offer it something better than endless consumption. The battle began on multiple levels simultaneously. Alliance ships engaged the devourer entities in normal space, while enhanced crew members fought a parallel conflict in the dimensional realm where the primary consciousness existed. Morrison led a small team including Dr. Hamilton, Commander Torres, and Tactical Officer Rodriguez into the quantum realm within the heart itself. The journey through the construct's interior revealed the true tragedy of the devourer consciousness. Vast chambers filled with preserved memories from a dead universe showed civilizations that had thrived for billions of years before cosmic entropy finally claimed them. The entity was not trying to conquer other realities out of malice. It was desperately attempting to resurrect loved ones and lost worlds using the only method it understood. In the deepest chamber of the construct, Morrison's team encountered the core consciousness itself. The being appeared as a shifting form of crystallized sorrow that radiated loneliness and pain across multiple dimensions. When it spoke, the voice carried the weight of 1 trillion extinct souls crying out for restoration. Why do you resist the rebuilding? The consciousness asked in tones that resonated through their enhanced minds. Do you not understand that all things must return to the perfect state that came before? Your galaxies are flawed copies of what my universe achieved. I seek only to restore the proper order. Dr. Hamilton stepped forward despite the overwhelming presence of the ancient entity. We understand your loss and we feel your pain. But consuming our reality will not bring back what you have lost. You are trying to build a copy using materials that can never match your original universe. The consciousness paused as it processed this concept. For billions of years, it had focused only on gathering enough dimensional energy to reconstruct its dead reality. The possibility that such reconstruction might be fundamentally impossible had never occurred to it. Morrison activated a communication device that Dr. Ryan Clark had built using principles learned from dozens of extinct civilizations. We want to show you something that might ease your suffering. Our species has learned that loss can be transformed into something new, rather than endlessly fighting to restore what is gone. Working together, the Alliance scientists projected their solution into the dimensional realm, where the consciousness could perceive it directly. Instead of trying to rebuild its lost universe in normal space, they offered to help create a new pocket dimension, where the consciousness could reconstruct its reality without consuming other civilizations. The process would require tremendous sacrifice. The endeavor itself would need to serve as an anchor point between dimensions, trapping the ship and volunteers from the crew in the new reality to ensure the dimensional barriers remained stable. Morrison knew that accepting this role meant giving up any chance of returning to normal human life. Captain, Commander Torres said quietly, the crew has already voted. 423 people volunteer to stay behind and help maintain the dimensional anchor. We know what this means and we accept the responsibility. The consciousness studied their proposal with senses that operated beyond normal understanding. Slowly, It began to comprehend that the Alliance was offering genuine help rather than trying to trick or destroy it. The concept of voluntary sacrifice for the benefit of others was something that its perfect universe had never needed to develop. "Your offer has merit," the consciousness finally responded. "But how can I trust beings from a flawed reality to understand the requirements of perfection?" Dr. Hamilton smiled despite the overwhelming stress of the moment. "Because imperfection is what allows us to grow and change. Your perfect universe became static and died. Our flawed reality continues to evolve and create new possibilities. We can teach you how to build something that will last because it can adapt." The consciousness accepted their proposal and began the process of creating the new pocket dimension. Across the galaxy, devourer entities suddenly stopped their attacks and began transforming into something new. Instead of consuming dimensional energy, they started generating it in patterns that healed damaged spacetime rather than destroying it. Morrison watched from the bridge of the Endeavor as the ship prepared to make its final transition into the pocket dimension. The Alliance fleet was already beginning its journey home to galaxies that would be safe from the Devourer threat forever. The war was over and peace had been achieved through understanding rather than violence. As the dimensional barriers closed around them, Morrison felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond personal accomplishment. Humanity had not just saved the galaxy through superior technology or military might. They had succeeded by doing what humans did best. They had found a way to turn enemies into allies and transform cosmic tragedy into hope for the future.